welcome to Round Robin. I'm your host, Robin McCormick with the City of Hampton, and today we are going to talk with historian and Project 1619 founder Calvin Pearson. Welcome.
Well, good morning. I'm glad to be back again.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's been a while. A lot has happened since the last time I was here.
It has. You know, you think history is history, but evolving knowledge has sort of changed what we know about the first enslaved Africans who arrived in this country.
Well, that's true. I've been teaching and promoting this history for an unbelievable 29 years.
Wow.
I started this journey back in 1994, and we're still educating people. A lot of people still can't understand the difference between the Jamestown story and the Hampton story. So we've tried to refute all of those history books that taught us that the first Africans arrived at Jamestown, and so now we've come a long way. I think we've educated a lot of people. A lot of people around the world have caught on to the message. I'm working now with people in Germany. I'm working with people in the Angola and other African nations to make sure that the story is being told correctly. And that's been a long journey.
Right, right. And it's not that they didn't go to Jamestown. They did, but they arrived in Hampton first. This was the landing.
Yeah. Jamestown wanted you to believe that the ship arrived at Jamestown. Mm-hmm. And that was not true.
No.
And they knew it was not true. So we provided the documentation that says that the first ship was called the White Lion. It was an English pirate ship. And it landed at Point Comfort on August 25th, 1619.
Well, I think the date's a little fuzzy. I think it's just late August.
Yeah,
but
people,
sometime in that range.
Some people don't want to use the date we have. The historians and the accurate documentation says late August. Mm-hmm. And some people wanted to say August 20th. And we're saying late August is the last weekend of August. And we've been working with a variety of researchers, and we all came up with August 25th. But like you said, a lot of people don't want to accept 25th. They prefer, we say, the last part of August. Right. So if we go with the last part of August, we know the White Lion arrived or landed at Point Comfort, and they sold approximately 30 of the enslaved Africans. And we know that somewhere days or weeks later that 2 of the Africans were taken to Jamestown. But yet for 390 years, the whole narrative was that all of the Africans landed at Jamestown. And we say no, only 2 were taken to Jamestown. And then there is a false narrative that the White Lion sailed to Jamestown and sold Africans. And we know through documentation that that's not true. The White Lion stayed at Point Comfort for 30 days, refreshing and repairing the ship because it had just gone through a horrific battle with the San Juan Bautista, the slave ship that they attacked in the Gulf of Mexico in the Bay of Campeche. So they stayed at Point Comfort, repairing the ship, restocking the ship for 30 days, and then they left. Ship never went to Jamestown. So those are part of the steps or the false inaccuracies of the history that we've been trying to tell now, like I said, for 29 years.
Gotcha. And so you commemorate that arrival every year, and you have for how long now?
Well, Project 1619 Incorporated started what we call then African Landing Day in 2008 in the city of Hampton, where we were still trying to prove to people that our narrative was correct. In 2011, the Fort Monroe was decommissioned, became more open to the public. Mm-hmm. And when we met with the commanding officer over there, they welcomed us to come back where it all began. In 2011, when President Barack Obama declared it a national monument, that was more credence to what we had been telling people, because people don't understand that it was our research that was given to President Barack Obama for him to make that decision that this is going to be my first national monument. So there's a lot of stuff that we do or have done that we don't get credit for. But we just want to let people know that after all these years, we've accomplished a lot, and we still have a lot to do to get the message out there.
So tell me about the commemoration this year. Dates, times, location.
This year we tried to do a 3-day weekend because we want people to come and visit Hampton, come and visit Fort Monroe. We have a wonderful history here. Our African American history goes back to 1619. It goes through 1861, the Contraband War. We've got so much African American history in this city. I tell people that we are one of the unknown African American histories in America because we are not a Selma, we are not a Montgomery, we don't have a Pettus Bridge. But if you look at the foundation of America and the African American imprint, we are the beginning. We are ground zero. Everything that happened after 1619 is because of 1619. One of the things that we talk about is what were the contributions of the Africans? And I tell people that if you go back and you look at the history of Virginia, and we talk about the English settlers, the English settlers were very illiterate people. If you go back and look at the history, the people that they were sending to the Virginia colony were the beggars and the thieves and the people from the urban areas, the slums of the streets of London. They rounded them up and sent them to Virginia. You had a choice to make if you lived in England. You could if you committed a crime, you could go to jail, or we'll send you to the Virginia colony. So a lot of people coming in from England had no skills. They couldn't grow crops. They couldn't raise animals, the herding, the sheep, the pigs, the cows. They couldn't do any of that stuff. So if we go back and we look at 1609 and 1610, when the settlers were locked into the fort because the indigenous people wouldn't let them out because they were trying to force the settlers to get on your ship and go back where you came from. And that worked for a couple years. Jamestown has documented the fact that they got so hungry that when people started dying, they started eating the corpses. So,
I want to rope you back to the landing commemoration. So tell us when that's going to be and what it's going to be like.
So we're starting off with a program on Thursday night at the Visitors and Education Center from 6 until 8 o'clock. We're bringing in Brian Owens, who has been contracted to do the memorial for the first African landing. He's going to talk about the memorial, the history of it, and provide some schematic drawings of what the memorial may look like. And
the memorial will be a statue. I mean, people don't understand. I think there's different kinds of memorials. So this will be a physical representation. Physical representation.
It won't be a statue.
Okay.
It will be more of a vertical bronze presentation that would be at the landing site of the first Africans. On Friday, to give the Tucker family a little plug, at 11 o'clock, they have their annual commemoration program at the Tucker Cemetery. That's 11 o'clock on Friday.
Okay.
On Saturday, we have a full day of events. We go back to the Visitors and Education Center at 8:30 in the morning where Brian Tucker's doing another public presentation. Then we go to Continental Park at Fort Monroe starting at 11 o'clock, and we have a full day of activities which includes a libation, the African drummers and dancers. We have dignitaries coming in from Africa. We do a national prayer service. We've got some great groups coming in. One of the popular groups we've got coming in out of Richmond is called the Elegba Folklore Society. We do a bell ringing program. We do a flower petal ceremony. And then that Saturday evening, starting at 6 o'clock, we have a premiere documentary presentation at the American Theater being produced by Rick Murphy, who is a well-renowned documented author and documentarian who created a book called Arrival of the First Africans in Virginia.
Oh.
And then he created that into a documentary of the same title, Arrival of the First Africans in Virginia. So he's got a 52-minute documentary that we're going to show at the American Theater, along with a panel discussion. And then on Sunday morning, we go back to Fort Monroe at Outlook Beach. At 6 o'clock in the morning, we're going to do a healing and cleansing program in the waters off of Fort Monroe. So there's a full weekend of activities.
Yeah, there really is. And I do also want to plug that Visitor Center Museum at Fort Monroe. That is, for people who haven't seen it yet, absolutely gorgeous and really, in terms of its storytelling, just a beautiful place.
Yeah, I applaud the staff at Fort Monroe, from Glenn Older to Francois Bonnell and Phyllis to I just applaud them, because I tell them that the exhibit they have there is a world-renowned exhibit, one of the most true and accurate exhibits that you're going to see on African American history. I think they rival any museum in the United States about telling the true and accurate story of our ancestors.
That is important, because I think, and that it was built after more things were known. So it was built after people knew that the 1619 arrival was here. It was, scholarship had changed a little bit, partly your works of lots of historians in digging out the details of this story.
You're true. This exhibit could not have been completed maybe 10 years ago, because we were still telling the story, still trying to get people to believe the story. And I think we've done a great job of that, and that's why I call it an exhibit. That's why the exhibit there is so true and accurate, inspirational.
Yeah.
We've heard the stories of people going through there and coming out with tears in their eyes, because they just couldn't understand the magnitude that some of these people had to go through in order to survive in Virginia.
And I think, too, we should mention, we're talking about the arrival of the first enslaved, that Fort Monroe also has the story of the beginning of the end of slavery in the Confederate States, because the contraband decision and the freeing, Fort Monroe being the furthest south place that was in the Union, and freeing enslaved people, mostly so they couldn't fight for the other side, but still, beginning that change in the war of really focusing on slavery and emancipation.
Yeah, one of the slogans at Fort Monroe, which we use, is the Ark of Freedom, because we're the beginning and we're the beginning of the end. So when you look at 1619 and you've got these 32 enslaved Africans being brought here, and then we go to 1861 and the Contraband War, which was really the self-emancipation of Africans. They did not wait until 1863.
No, they escaped.
They escaped and self-emancipated themselves. So that's why we talk about the Ark of Freedom is here in Virginia, here at Hampton, here at Point Comfort, here at Fort Monroe. And we just encourage people to come here and look at and visit the history walk. We tell people come to Point Comfort and walk the grounds of their ancestors. I think Fort Monroe is a spiritual place, and that's why we want people to come to Fort Monroe.
Calvin, thank you so much for stopping by today.
Well, thank you. I was so happy to be here today to just talk about our upcoming event.
Right. And speaking of that upcoming event, I hope to see you there. There is so much we have learned about those early first enslaved Africans, and also the total Ark of Freedom at Fort Monroe. Thanks for watching.